Welcome back. This is the final part of the Featherby and Friends Crochet Along. And for this part, we are going to be doing the finishing touches, which is the beak, the tail feathers, and the little feathers on top of his hat. So we're going to start with the beak. What you're going to need for this whole part is your blue yarn, your yellow, a sharp needle, 2 blunt needles, and crochet hook and a pair of scissors. So right now we're going to set aside these things and just use the yellow yarn and the sharp needle. And I've got a nice long piece here. I'm going to thread that sharp needle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in to a stitch on the side of the bird. Doesn't matter which one it is, just as long as you are going between the stitches into that gap and not snagging the yarn itself. And then we're going to come out where you want the corner of the beak to be, which is right there. So before we keep going here, we're going to just take a peek at the finished beak here and see that the inside corners of the beak are lined up with the inside edge of the eyes, and it's about a row down. The height of the beak is about 3 rounds. So when we start defining the tip of the beak, we're going to need to remember that. So we have one corner defined. So the next thing we're going to do is go straight across to the other corner. And this is where having your sharp needle is important, because if there isn't really a gap there, you're going to have to just go right through the yarn itself. And you're going to come out down at the bottom wherever you think the tip of the beak should be. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to pull that through, but just give it a little bit of a wiggle. Okay, so that is the top of the beak. And then we're going to go up from the tip of the beak and go across and define that top. Now this stitch that we put right here is really more of a guide, and it's going to be covered up. But each time you come out at the bottom of the beak, you want to try to not split your yellow yarn and come out as close to the same spot as the others. We're going to have quite a few stitches going through that same spot. And you want to pull it just snug. If you pull it too tight, that's going to distort the material and give you a funny looking bird. If you'd prefer to use a piece of felt and sew it on rather than embroidering, that works too. Okay, and that is the last of my vertical stitches. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to define the tip of the beak, and if I switch to a blunt needle for this part, it's a little bit easier because I want to go underneath those stitches that I have without snagging either the blue yarn or the yellow. So I just go under them and kind of wrap around, and then switch back. Now my yarn is completely coming apart here, so I'm going to cut myself a new end. And this is another good reason to cut yourself a longer piece than you really need, because the last thing you want to do is spend all of your time just trying to thread a ragged end through your needle. Okay, so now I'm going to go right back down through the same stitch where the tip of the beak was and come back up one of the corners, doesn't matter which one. There it goes. Okay. And pull it just snug. Like so. Okay, and then we're going to define the top. By going across to the other corner. And this is where you have to be careful to come out the side. Oops, little wing is in the way. Come out the side the same stitch as you went in at the very beginning. Hopefully without snagging the yarn at all. And I just kind of rearrange that a little bit and give it a little squish to see how it's all lying. I'm thinking maybe I could have done one more to really fill it out, but I think I'm happy with that for now. All right, so now we're going to hide these ends. By tying them together. And hopefully, if you didn't snag that blue yarn, what's going to happen is that knot is just going to disappear below the surface. And we're counting on that stuffing in there. Pull it nice and tight. I'm going to do one more to keep everything where it's supposed to be. And we switch to our blunt needle and go in that same stitch and out anywhere at all so that that knot just disappears below the surface. And then I'm going to take the other side, put it into the same stitch, but I'm going to go the opposite direction as I did with the other tail, and just weave it through the stuffing a couple of times to make sure that that is not going anywhere. And I'm going to do this one a couple more times as well. And then just the same as what we did with the bottom, where we give an extra tug, cut it kind of close to the surface, and then that'll just disappear. And do it with the other side as well. Give it an extra tug, cut it off, and let it just disappear below the surface. Okay, and there we have a little bird with a beak. And I definitely made this one a little bit thinner than this one. I could have done one more stitch. I could always go back and add that. But for right now, let's move on to his feathers on top of his head. So for this, you're going to be using the blue yarn again. And you need a blunt needle for this part. And I'm actually going to use this one right here. This one will work fine. This one's just a little bit easier because with this one, you insert the needle in, but then you have this big head that needs to get through. The eye makes it a little bit wider. Whereas with this one, the eye is collapsible. And so it doesn't take any extra effort to get the eye through. And we're going to be going out through this magic loop, which is very tight. So I like to use this one. I'm going to cut a nice long piece. I'm going to thread it through. Like so. And then I'm going to go, actually I'm going to start at the top, sorry. We're going to go straight down into the magic loop, right in the middle of it. Like that. And that just goes through like butter. Okay, I'm going to pull, I think I'm going to leave about that much. These guys are going to get trimmed, so don't worry about them. Now, to make sure that these feathers don't fall out, we're going to go back and forth a lot. So same idea as before, weaving it in, going through these open gaps, and you can see I snagged a little bit of the yarn because that is dimpling now. So I just kind of loosened it and I think it'll be okay. I'm not going to pull as tight because I don't want that fabric to be dimpled. That one was better. Okay, and keep an eye on how much yarn you have, because you need to make sure you can go right back out the top. And you're going to keep on doing this until either you don't have enough yarn to do more, or you can pull on these and have them not come out. And you can see my little dimples causing problems again. And do one more. And go right back out the top of his head. Okay. And you should be able to pull on those and not have them come out. And hopefully you're not going to do what I did and snag the yarn, because now when I pull on these guys, it dimples in the back where I snagged the yarn a little bit. But I could pretty easily go back and fix that. But you get the idea for right now. So all I'm going to do to finish it off is trim them however long I want his head feathers to be. Like so. And there he is. He's got kind of a wild hairdo going on. Alright, so the last thing is his tail feathers. And for this, you're going to need more blue yarn and your hook. So we're going to be doing 4 knots, and each one has 2 strands that are folded. So we need 8 pieces of yarn. So I just did the width of my hand, really. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and I'm going to cut that. Like so. Okay, so now I should have 8 pieces. And I'm going to keep them in groups of 2. And I'm going to go into a stitch on his back. And I want to make sure that I'm keeping this centered. So I think I'm going to go about there. I'm going to go out this way, grab 2 of those strands, pull them through, and grab all 4 of those ends, pull that through the loop, and pull it tight. Okay, so that's 1. Now for the next one, I'm going to go the other way. 2 more strands. And pull it tight. Now, I'm looking like it's a little bit too far to the right here, so instead of adding another one on this side, I'm going to do both of the last ones over here. If you don't want to use your hook, you can always use your fingers. And the last 2. Like that. Okay. And there you have all 4 knots. Now, ideally, I would have these 2 going one way and these 2 going the other way, because I was off-centered. I did not do it quite the way I wanted. So I'm actually going to pull this one out and do it the other way. Like that. Okay. And the last thing you need to do is trim his tail feathers. Like so. And there you have a little bluebird. I hope you enjoyed this crochet along. The techniques that we use today are ones that I use in a lot of my patterns. So if you enjoyed making this little bird, please check out my other patterns and make some fun projects. Thanks for joining me.